Welcome back to the table, friends. I'm your humble host, Grady M. So with me, as always, is Owen.
Hi there.
Today, Owen, do you like the shiny click-clack rocks?
Shiny click-clack rocks? Yes, I own many shiny click-clack rocks.
So pretty much anybody who's ever been involved in the TTRPG or wargaming or anything close to it scene has probably encountered the dice goblin in some form. The urge or the person at the table who decides to Laura Bailey it up and bring a metric ton of shiny little plastic pieces to the table.
Mm-hmm.
Bringing emotional, connections to certain dice or fear responses to others.
I mean, we have our own green dice.
The green dice have upgraded their location too.
Oh.
Yeah, I decided to put them in the cursed coffin. I want to put all the hatred together in one place.
Jeez.
I thought it'd be fun. I guess I need to relook the definition of fun up. But to do a deep dive into dice and some of the stuff that it's probably good to know if you're going to get into RPGs, especially if you want to do game design.
Yeah.
So today we're going to dive into kind of like some information about the history of dice, some information about their ability as a random generator to represent chance, and how designers may take advantage of that in various systems to basically achieve their design philosophies. We'll also go a little bit into basically some modern dice making technologies so that you can have a good idea of how much that dice set when you're walking around the convention should cost.
So by the end of this, I should be able to make my own dice?
I think you should be able to make your own dice.
Awesome.
I mean, it's
sweet.
It goes back farther than you know. Okay. So dice in their myriad form stand as ubiquitous and fundamental tools for introducing randomness and uncertainty into games. From ancient pastimes to the intricate systems of modern tabletop role-playing games and war games, these polyhedral objects have consistently served as arbiters of fate, shaping narratives, determining outcomes, and fostering a profound sense of suspense and engagement. Their enduring presence in human recreational and ritualistic practices speaks to a deep-seated fascination with chance and the unpredictable. So we're going to undertake a comprehensive exploration of dice, beginning with their enigmatic origins and antiquity, and progressing through their pivotal role in development of TTRPGs and war games. We will meticulously detail the mechanical and mathematical principles underpinning various dice systems, from the straightforward uniformity of a single die to the complex distributions of dice pools and exploding rolls.
Ooh.
We will also shed light on the cutting-edge advancements in modern-day manufacturing, the diverse materials employed, and showcase notable examples that transcend mere functionality to become objects of historical, artistic, or financial value.
Oh, wow.
By examining these facets, we aim to provide a robust understanding of the profound impact dice have had and continue to have on the architecture of games and the experience of their players. So, the history of dice is as old as, if not older than, recorded human history, with their precise origins remaining uncertain. The prevailing hypothesis suggests that these gaming implements evolved from the ancient practice of fortune-telling, specifically through the use of talus bones, commonly known as knuckle bones from hoofed animals. You ever seen those?
Yep.
These astragali were naturally suited for this purpose due to their roughly cube-like shape, possessing 4 distinct flat sides upon which they could land. Early civilizations, including those in Mesopotamia, utilized these bones, hooves, and horns from animals like sheep or deer as precursors to formalized dice. The earliest known dice date back between 2800 and 2500 BCE.
Man, getting back there.
And they were unearthed as part of a backgammon-like game set at the Burnt City, an archaeological site in southeastern Iran. Further evidence of the antiquity includes bone dice from Skara Brae, Scotland, dated 3100 to 2400 BCE, and terracotta dice from the Mohenjo-Daro, an Indus Valley civilization settlement, from 2500 to 1900 BCE. Notably, at least one die from the Mohenjo-Daro already featured the modern arrangement where opposite sides sum to 7. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Initially, the primary users of these early dice or dice-like objects were often religious figures who employed them for divination, seeking signs from deities or predicting the future, alongside other randomizers such as sticks, rocks, or even animal entrails. This early use of dice for fortune-telling rather than mere amusement signifies a fundamental human endeavor to understand or predict uncertain events, often attributing outcomes to supernatural forces. The subsequent transition of these tools from mystical practices to recreational games reflects a profound shift in how humans conceptualize and interact with uncertainty. Instead of serving as a direct conduit for divine messages, the act of rolling a die transformed into a mechanism for fair, secular resolution within a defined system, such as a game. This evolution led to the groundwork for modern concept of controlled randomness, where unpredictable outcomes are integrated into the structured framework for entertainment and competition. So the form and function of dice continues to evolve across various civilizations. The ancient Egyptian game of Senet, played as early as 3000 BCE, utilized flat two-sided throw sticks that function as a rudimentary form of dice, indicating player movement on a board. Pyramidal or four-sided dice are as ancient as their cubical counterparts, having been discovered with the Sumerian royal game of one of the oldest complete board games known, dating back to the 3rd millennium BCE. The iconic six-sided cubical dice, featuring dots or pips to denote values, first appeared in Mesopotamia around 1300 BCE and were subsequently found in Chinese excavations from 600 BCE and Egyptian tombs from 2000 BCE.
That's crazy.
Think about that. Every time you pick up dice to roll some Warhammer, you are doing something that humanity has done for 4,000 years.
Yeah, it's probably one of the older implements that are out there, aside from like the hammer and knife.
Very much so. And that's why it's also gone through not only the history of it being tied to ritual and stuff, but also for a very long time, it being a sign of scum and villainy, basically. Yeah. Being a sign of people that were trying to deceive or to throw money and stuff. The diversification of dice shapes continued with 20-sided dice, known as the icosahedron, found from 150 BCE. Means the D20 is older than Christ. Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy.
The expansion into polyhedral forms was not a mere aesthetic development. It was a fundamental precursor to the mechanical depth seen in later games. A greater number of faces on the dice allowed for a wider range of numeric results, which in turn enabled more granular and complex game mechanics. For instance, a D20 offers 20 distinct outcomes, providing a much finer resolution than a D6 is 6 outcomes. This diversification, driven by an intuitive understanding of varied probability spaces, laid the fundamental geometric and probabilistic groundwork for the complex random number generator systems that would later become central to TTRPGs and wargamings. During the Greek and Roman eras, dice were crafted from a variety of materials, including bone, ivory, bronze, agate, rock crystal, onyx, jet, alabaster, marble, amber, and porcelain. The arrangements of pips on the dice also changed over time. While some early dice had varied numbering, the sevens numbering system, where opposite sides sum to 7, became the predominant standard around 1450 CE, replacing earlier primes arrangement. Around the same period, dice began to show increased standardization in shape and a decrease in size, a development possibly linked to the growing illegality of gambling, making smaller dice easier to conceal. It's kind of one of the fun things when you're a rogue in World of Warcraft and you pick people's dice, you get dice all the time.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny. So despite their long history, it was not until the 16th century that dice games became subjects of rigorous mathematical analysis. Figures such as Girolamo Cardano and Galileo Galilei instituted the systematic study of dice, leading to the formal conception of randomness and probability. Prior to this period, the prevailing cultural attitude attributed dice outcomes to the indirect action of gods or other supernatural forces. This intellectual shift from a mystical worldview to one based on empirical observation and rational inquiry was profound. It allowed for a systemic study and prediction of chance, transforming dice from tools of fate into predictable statistical instruments. This foundational understanding of probability was absolutely critical for the later development of sophisticated games and designs. The integration of dice into complex strategic and narrative games marks a significant chapter in their history, culminating in the central role in tabletop role-playing games and wargames. Modern wargames themselves trace their lineage back to chess variants developed in Europe, as we've extensively talked. The true polyhedral revolution in gaming, however, began in the late 1960s and the early 1970s, driven by miniature wargames.
Mm-hmm.
These enthusiasts started utilizing dice in the shape of platonic solids, polyhedral dice, to obtain results that could not easily be produced on a conventional six-sided dice. The innovation was born from a need for a wider range of outcomes, providing more varied and less predictable results than the limited scope of standard D6s. It was from this fertile ground that Dungeons & Dragons emerged in 1974, created by Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson. D&D was the first game with widespread commercial availability to fully embrace and popularize the use of polyhedral dice. So Gygax explicitly sought to introduce more chaos and randomness into the game than the 2d6 system, which tended to produce middle numbers too frequently, leading to the d20 becoming the core resolution mechanic. This demonstrates a clear, causal chain where the sophisticated probabilistic needs of wargaming aimed at simulating complex battlefield outcomes directly provided the tools and impetus for the foundation of random number generation in TTRPGs. The polyhedral revolution was not merely about new shapes, it was about unlocking new levels of mechanical granularity and probabilistic diversity for emergent gameplay.
That's a good sentence.
Wow. D&D made dice central to its gameplay, using them to determine the outcome of virtually all player actions, from attack rolls and damage calculations to ability and skill checks. Instructions were often verbal or implied the required roll through the description of the result range. This changed in 1975 when Ted Johnston introduced a standardized dice notation, example D8 plus 2, in the fanzine Lacrums and Excursions. His intention was to provide a clear and concise way to discuss probability distributions within the burgeoning TTRPG community. This notation rapidly disseminated through the fan base, demonstrating the powerful, organic, and collaborative nature of early TTRPG development. The community's need for a clear, concise language to discuss game mechanics drove its widespread acceptance. Eventually, the fan-driven standard was formally adopted by Gary Gygax in the first edition of Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, 1977 to 1979, becoming deeply ingrained in TTRPG culture and remaining a universal language in the hobby today. So, the evolution of dice and tabletop gaming is inextricably linked to the understanding and application of probability theory. Different dice mechanics are designed to produce distinct probability distributions, each serving specific gameplay and narrative objectives. So let's go from geeky to nerdy to math nerd.
Let's see how quickly we can put our listeners.
Oh man, I can't wait to see the YouTube algorithms just drop out. I'll just have to pin math. No, thank you, sir. All right, so let's talk about the single die roll.
Okay.
So a single fair die, keyword, regardless of the number of sides, exhibits a uniform probability distribution.
Mm-hmm.
This means that each possible outcome has an equal chance of appearing.
Yes.
So for a standard six-sided die, the probability of rolling any specific number from 1 to 6 is 1/6, or approximately 16.7%. The mean or average result for a single die is 3.5. When calculating the probability of an event involving a single die, such as rolling a number greater than 4, you simply have to sum the probabilities of the favorable outcomes. So you basically add the probability of a 5 plus the probability of a 6 being rolled. The use of a single die, particularly in D20 games like Dungeons & Dragons, represents a fundamental design choice for systems that prioritize high variance and dramatic swings in outcomes. This flat distribution ensures that every number from the lowest to the highest has the same likelihood of appearing. Consequently, extreme results, such as a natural 20 when usually a critical hit, or a natural 1 critical failure, are often just as likely as any other number. This design philosophy emphasizes the thrill of extreme success or failure over a consistent, predictable average. It allows for heroic moments and catastrophic missteps to occur with a fixed perceptible frequency, contributing significantly to the game's dramatic tension. The continued prevalence of the D20 in major TTRPG signifies that many designers and players value this inherent unpredictability, as it shapes the narrative by making every roll a moment of tension where a character's fate can swing wildly rather than consistently trending towards an average. But what if we could go further? So, a little more complicated are multiple dice sums. So when multiple dice are rolled and their results are summed, the probability distribution no longer remains uniform, but tends to form a bell curve, also known as a normal or Gaussian distribution. And this type of distribution, results around the mean are significantly more likely to occur than extremely high or low values. This phenomenon arises because there are far more combinations of individual die results that sum to the median value. For example, when rolling 2 6-sided dice, a sum of 7 is the most probable outcome because it occurs in 6 out of the 36 possible combinations. This statistical behavior is formally explained in the central limit theorem. The central limit theorem states that a number of independent, identically distributed random variables, such as individual dice rolls, in a sample increases, the distribution of their sum approaches a normal bell-shaped distribution, irrespective of the original distribution of the individual variables. This means that the resulting bell curve is simply the sum of the means of the individual dice. The spread of the curve is determined by the standard deviation. A large number of dice result in a narrower, steeper bell curve. This means that the average result becomes even more likely, and extreme results become far less probable as the number of dice increase. The characteristic makes systems like 3d6 for ability scores in many RPGs, 2d6 for Traveler, and 3d6 for GURPS, distinct from single dice systems. The adoption of bell curve distributions in game design reflect a philosophy that prioritizes predictability and emphasizes character skill and modifiers. So by making average results more common and extreme results rare, these systems ensure that outcomes are less subject to wild swings of luck. This design choice fosters a sense of reliability and competence for skilled characters, making repeated failures at simple tasks less likely. Means that the small bonuses or penalties, while having a varying impact, often significantly affect the probability of success, particularly around the mean. This approach supports narratives where character progression and statistical advantage are constantly rewarded, creating a different kind of player experience compared to the high variance of D20 systems. We could go even further.
Oh, let's, please, can we?
So, speaking that this podcast kind of came from Vampire, dice pools.
Yes.
So dice pool systems represent another distinct approach to random outcome generation in TTRPGs. These mechanics involve rolling a number of dice, typically d6s or d10s, and then counting how many of these individual dice meet or exceed a specific target number. The total count of these successes then determines the overall outcome of action. Mathematically, dice pool systems typically adhere to a binomial probability distribution. In this distribution, if y represents the number of successes, then n is the number of dice in the pool, analogous to the number of trials, and p is the probability of a single die achieving a success. Then y follows a binomial distribution. This means the number of hits or expected successes in such a system is simply calculated as n times p. For instance, in Shadowrun, where d6s are rolled and a 5 or 6 counts as a success, so you have a 1/3 chance, a pool of 13 dice would yield an expected 4.33 successes. Examples of gaming employing dice pools are Shadowrun, World of Darkness, Legend of the Five Rings, which actually uses a roll and keep variation where a number of dice is rolled but only a subset are kept. These systems often allow modification of the dice pool by adding or subtracting dice based on circumstances, effectively representing bonuses or penalties. The design philosophy behind dice pools emphasizes granular success and risk management. Unlike single die rolls or sums, which often provide a binary pass-fail outcome, Dice pools allow for a more nuanced result. The number of successes can directly translate to the effectiveness or quality of an action, providing a granular scale of success. Example, 1 success is a basic pass. 3 successes is an exceptional outcome. This also enables push your luck mechanics, where players can choose to roll additional dice or accept complications to gain more successes.
We're fans of that.
Yeah. This system shifts the focus from a single high-stakes roll to more distributed and often player-controlled assignment of risk. It highlights the cumulative effect of characters' abilities, represented by a larger die pool, and allows for a richer narrative description of how well an action was performed, aligning with games that prioritize detail outcomes and player agency in managing probabilistic resources.
That's interesting.
Yeah. But we can go further.
Oh, can we?
Exploding dice.
Mm-hmm.
So exploding dice, also known as acing or open-ended rolls, introduce a dynamic element where rolling the maximum possible value on a die triggers a reroll, with the new result added to the total potentially continuing indefinitely. This mechanic fundamentally alters the probability distribution of the roll. This system creates a right-skewed probability distribution, meaning that while lower results still have a consistent probability, higher, rarer results become theoretically possible, extending the potential outcome range beyond the die's nominal value. For an n-sided die, the expected value for an exploding die can be calculated using the formula 2 times n minus 1 times n plus 1. Let's see somebody write that down. The factor of increase is in expected value is n minus 1. This benefit is most significant for low-sided dice. For example, an exploding D4 sees its average increased by 33%, whereas an exploding D20's average is only increased by a meager 5%. Mm-hmm. This suggests that the mechanic is particularly impactful in systems that use smaller dice. So examples of games that utilize exploding dice include the Storyteller system, Shadowrun, Hackmaster, Ars Magica, and the Seventh Sea. So variations also exist as a compounding exploding dice, where all exploding rolls are summed into a single result, or penetrating exploding dice, where 1 is subtracted from each subsequent exploding roll. The design philosophy behind exploding dice is to inject cinematic potential and embrace the long tail of luck. Designers employ this mechanic when they want to introduce the possibility of extraordinary outcomes, allowing even a character with modest abilities using a small die to, through extreme luck, achieve something truly exceptional. The mechanic fuels exciting moments and fosters a sense of unbound potential with the game's narrative. This directly impacts player psychology by offering the tantalizing possibility of a miracle roll. It supports some narratives where unexpected bursts of power and success are desired, adding a layer of dramatic unpredictability that can turn the tide of encounter or challenge, particularly effective in systems that use smaller dice pools where such a boost would be most impactful. So it brings up a good point. There is something very powerfully different emotionally from knowing that you are highly unlikely to do something versus you cannot do it.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's always really interesting. I guess the critical hit in D20 kind of does it because it hits all the time.
Well, I feel like we could talk about like 40K, you have the critical hits, which are basically their version of you roll the 6 and it's an automatic, like an extra hit or something like that. I like that a lot. That feels really good. And that kind of, I think that plays well into a lot of this.
Yeah, there's something there that kind of you need to keep track of, especially if you're playing around with game design. Mm-hmm. And here's direct shade. Let's see. I realize I'm going to throw some shade out here. The choice between roll over and roll under mechanics is a fundamental design decision that significantly impacts player perception and cognitive load during gameplay.
I don't like roll under.
In a roll-over system, the player rolls dice, adds any relevant modifiers, and then compares the total to a target number or difficulty value. Success is achieved if the total meets or exceeds the target number. This approach is often perceived as more intuitive by players, as the common association is the bigger numbers on dice equal good. Mm-hmm. Conversely, in a roll under system, the player rolls dice and aims to achieve the result equal to or less than the target number, which frequently correlates directly to the character's stat or skill value. This method can be quicker and cleaner in execution, as it often involves a simple comparison without the need for additional arithmetic. From a cognitive load perspective, roll over typically requires an additional step before the comparison to the target, whereas a roll under is often a direct comparison, potentially saving mental energy during play. For designers, consistency is key. Adhering to one system throughout a game is generally advised to prevent player confusion. Both roll over and roll under systems are capable of incorporating degrees of success where the margin between the roll and the target indicates how well or properly the action was performed. The choice between these systems reflects a designer's prioritization of cognitive ease and player satisfaction. Roll over aligns with a common psychological association of higher numbers with positive outcomes, potentially enhancing player enjoyment and the satisfied feeling of rolling high.
Numbers go up.
Rolling under, by contrast, can streamline resolution by reducing arithmetic, especially in systems where character statistics serve as a direct target number. This seemingly minor mechanical choice significantly impacts the feel of the game and its accessibility. A system that aligns with intuitive player expectations can reduce cognitive friction, allowing players to focus more on a narrative and less on mechanics, thereby influencing the overall pacing and immersion of a game. Guess what game uses roll under?
Oh, what game is that?
GURPS.
Yeah, that was one thing I didn't like about it. I do think it's funny, though, too, because there's one particular person that is at our table quite frequently that if we play any game that was roll under, he would dominate.
Just success.
He would dominate.
Success. I could do whatever I want. Success. Ooh, look at this. Snake eyes all the time.
Every time, snake eyes.
So, beyond simple successes or failure, many TTRPG systems incorporate critical outcomes to inject heightened drama and narrative impact into the resolution of actions. These include critical successes and critical failures, which are special results triggered by specific die rolls or by achieving/failing a target by a significant margin. Crits typically lead to amplified positive effects, such as double damage of an attack, while fumbles result in amplified negative consequences, potentially leading to unforeseen complications or dramatic setbacks. A prominent mechanic for influencing these probabilities in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition is advantage and disadvantage.
Mm-hmm.
When a character has advantage, they roll 2 dice and take the higher result. With a disadvantage, they roll 2 dice and take the lower. The mathematical impact of the system on critical outcomes is significant.
Yeah. You're pretty much I've noticed that almost any time I have disadvantage, I'm pretty much guaranteed one dice is going to be a 20.
Yeah. If P represents the probability of a critical on a straight roll, so 1 out of 20 or 5%, then the probability of a critical hit with disadvantage is 0.25%. Drastically reducing the chance. Conversely, the probability with advantage is basically 2p or 9.75%, almost 10, nearly doubling the chances. This demonstrates how advantage significantly increases the likelihood of a critical success, while disadvantage drastically reduces it by manipulating the probability curve rather than simply adding flat modifiers. Many modern systems also move beyond a binary pass-fail to offer degrees of success. This allows for more nuanced outcomes based on the margin of success or the numbers of success achieved. Outcomes can range from a partial success where the goal is achieved but with a complication to varying levels of critical success, exactly success with minor complications versus supercritical successes. For example, in Blades in the Dark, rolling the highest die as a 6 is a full success, while rolling multiple 6s results in a critical success with additional advantages. Other systems use raises or extra successes to denote increased effectiveness. Like our system that we're talking about is going to use them as a commodity.
You're right.
These mechanics reflect a maturation in TTRPG design where randomness is not merely a binary gate, but a narrative engine. Designers use these systems to enhance the dramatic tension and narrative's richness of die rolls. A critical success is not just a success, it is a spectacular success, often leading to cinematic descriptions. A partial success allows the story to continue with interesting complications, avoiding narrative dead ends. Advantage or disadvantage by modifying the distribution results rather than just the target number offers a more elegant and often more impactful way to represent situational favor or hindrance. These elements empower game masters to describe outcomes with greater nuance and allows players to feel the highs and lows of their character fortunes more accurately, directly contributing to emergent storytelling and memorable gameplay moments. And finally, narrative dice systems. Significant evolution in dice mechanics involve narrative dice systems, which utilize custom dice marked with unique symbols instead of, or in addition to, traditional numbers. These systems are designed to represent various aspects of gameplay that extend beyond a simple binary success or failure. The symbols on these dice can denote not only success or failure, but also elements such as advantage, setback, triumph, threat, or other narrative cues. The combination of symbols roles provides nuanced outcome that can help determine how or why a task succeeds or fails, thereby significantly enhancing the cinematic and storytelling elements of the game. A prominent example of this approach is the Fantasy Flights games. I can't remember what the system is called, but anyway, the Star Wars role-playing game uses it.
Mm-hmm.
This system employs different types of custom dice: ability, difficulty, proficiency, challenge, boost, and setback that are all rolled in opposition to each other. The resulting array of symbols generates a range of narrative outcomes that enrich the storytelling, providing prompts for additional narrative details or consequences beyond a simple numerical result. This represents a significant psychological shift or philosophical shift in game design. Instead of the dice solely answering the question, did it happen? They also provide prompts for how did it happen or what else happened. The randomness actively contributes to the narrative, providing hooks for improvisation and rich storytelling, moving beyond a purely mechanical resolution. This approach blurs the line between random outcome and narrative development. It empowers both players and game masters to interpret results creatively, fostering a more collaborative and dynamic storytelling environment. It suggests that the random element can be designed not just for fairness, but it's for capacity to inspire and guide the shared narrative, making the dice roll itself a source of the story. Now that we know how they're used, how do you make dice? Where do they come from?
They come from a little store that has a bunch of Warhammer, Magic, and other paraphernalia for sale in it.
Like a magical kingdom called Chessex.
Yes.
And the little dice goblins bring them to you in offerings. So while the production of dice has undergone significant transformation, moving from ancient handcrafted methods to highly sophisticated modern manufacturing process driven by both mass market demand and artisanal innovation. So the vast majority of modern non-precision dice are mass-produced through the plastic injection molding process. Common plastic materials include polymethyl methacrylate, PMMA, acrylic resin or synthetic urea.
Okay.
Yeah, that one kind of was like interesting. PMMA is favored due to its excellent impact strength, ease of coloring, and heat stability. The manufacturing process begins with the creation of a steel mold containing cavities that define the shape of the dice. Plastic pellets, which are pre-mixed with various pigments and colorants to achieve desired aesthetics, are then heated and melted. The melted plastic is injected under high pressure into the mold. Once the plastic cools and solidifies, the mold is opened and the newly formed dice are ejected. Pips or numbers on these dice are typically recessed and are an integral part of the mold design. The coloring for these numbers is achieved by submerging the entire die in paint, allowing it to dry, and then polishing it via tumbling finishing process. This abrasive tumbling scrapes off all the paint except for what remains on the recessed indents of the numbering. This process also serves to smooth and round the edges and corners of the die. In contrast, precision dice, often used in casinos, are manufactured to much more exacting standards. These dice are typically machined from solid bars of extruded cellulose acetate, cut to precise lengths to ensure each face is as square as possible. The pips are then meticulously drilled to a specific depth, usually plus or minus 4 mils, or 17 plus or minus 4 mils, and filled with opaque paint or epoxy at the same density as the material removed, ensuring perfect balance. These dice usually retain sharp razor edges, though evenly beveled or rounded edges are acceptable. Transparent or translucent materials are preferred in casino dice as they make tampered dice easier to detect.
Makes sense.
The scale and method of manufacturing directly determines the achievable level of precision and the types of aesthetic finishes. Mass production prioritizes cost effectiveness and volume, leading to less precise, more uniform products that are widely accessible. Precision manufacturing, though more expensive, allows for strict adherence to balance and sharp details, which are critical for professional gaming where absolute fairness is paramount. This distinction highlights a trade-off between accessibility and fidelity in dice production. Beyond mass production, though, recent years have witnessed a significant surge in the popularity of dice crafted from unusual or rare materials, catering to a growing market of collectors and enthusiasts. Metals are common for choice for high-end dice. Modern metal dice are typically made from a zinc alloy, which is often then plated with a more expensive metal finish. Aluminum is also utilized, offering a lighter metallic feel. Tungsten dice are particularly notable for their exceptional weight and high cost. Some metal dice are also manufactured to be hollow, producing a different tactile experience. Stone and gem dice are valued for their unique aesthetic qualities. Materials such as Cambaba jasper and green emerald are used, offering natural patterns and a distinct feel. However, crafting dice from stone presents challenges as they can be prone to chipping and are much more difficult to number accurately and consistently. The realm of exotic materials is perhaps the most intriguing. Artisan Dice, a U.S. brand founded in 2012, specializes in handcraft dice from a highly unique and often rare materials. Their offerings have included exotic wood, mammoth ivory, and even more unusual substances like mouse poop, usik, which is walrus bacula, I guess the tusks, and human bone, reportedly sourced from retired medical skeletons.
What the hell?
These dice are marketed as luxury items with their corresponding high prices justified by the exclusivity and the rarity of the source materials. The properties of resin dice as a material have opened new frontiers in dice aesthetics and craftsmanship. Unlike the injection molding process used for many plastics, resin dice are typically produced by mixing a 2-part liquid resin and pouring into a silicone mold. This method allows for significantly more complex and artistic designs, including intricate color swirling, layering of different hues, and creation of unique internal patterns. One notable innovation is the use of inclusions, where small, often painted resin figures or other miniature objects are carefully placed and sealed inside the dice during the pouring process. This creates captivating visual effects, with the internal elements appearing to float within the transparent or translucent resin, without significantly affecting the dice's balance due to similar material densities. Another advanced technique yields sharp-edged resin dice. Remember when these just showed up everywhere?
Yeah.
While most mass-produced dice are tumbled to round their edges, artisan resin dice can be polished and painted entirely by hand. This meticulous process, though time-consuming, results in a nearly glass-clear finish that exquisitely showcases the interior details in any inclusions. The crisp, sharp edges provide a distinct aesthetic and tactile experience preferred by many enthusiasts. Perhaps the most visually striking innovation is liquid core resin dice. These specialized dice are produced by sealing a small glass bauble filled with a liquid, typically oil or alcohol, and glitter inside the resin during casting. When the die is rolled or shaken, the liquid and glitter moved within the core, creating a mesmerizing snow globe effect.
We found some of those dice are evil.
Yeah, some of those are inherently evil. The inherent properties of resin as a pourable, customizable liquid, combined with advancements in molding and finishing techniques, directly enable these sophisticated aesthetic innovations. There is a clear example of material science driving product design. This innovation caters to a market that values not just functionality, but also the artistic and sensory experience of dice. It transforms dice from simple tools into miniature works of art, deepening the connection players feel to their gaming accessories and enriching the tactile experience of gameplay. Beyond their functional utility, dice have garnered significant value as historical artifacts, coveted collector's items, and unique curiosities reflecting in the deep cultural resonance and the artistry involved in their creation. The antiquity of dice is underscored by numerous archaeological discoveries. The oldest known dice was excavated from the burnt city of Iran, dating back to 2800 to 2500 BCE. Equally significant are bone dice found in Skara Brae, Scotland, as we mentioned, and terracotta dice from Mohenjo-Daro and Indus Valley civilization. These ancient finds provide tangible links to human history and evolution of play. Some historical dice command a substantial value. A 20-sided Roman die from around 100 AD, for instance, fetched nearly $18,000 at auction in 2003.
That's crazy.
The market for modern and vintage collector's dice is robust, driven by rarity, nostalgia, and exceptional craftsmanship. The original Creative Publications 1970 polyhedral dice, which were included in the very first Dungeons & Dragons sets, are considered the big daddies of D&D dice. Due to their scarcity, complete sets can command a price of up to $1,375. With individual dice selling for $150 to $300. These early dice are often sought by collectors aiming to complete their vintage game sets. Luxury collaborations also produce high-value dice, such as the Swarovski Crystal D20, a collaboration between Wizards of the Coast, which stands as a notable example of premium gaming accessories. Limited edition sets often released at conventions also appreciate in value. So some examples are, there's a Kraken Lux Fool's Glow Sharp Edge dice, which are around $70. Level Up Dice Aluminum Nightwing set is crafted from aluminum, selling for $120. Runic Green Emerald Gemstone dice, another luxury dice set for about $231. Artisan Dice Mammoth Ivory Collection, among the most expensive, fetching up to 2,600 dice. And the Norse Foundry Nimbus Metal Dice, an exceptionally high-value set reaching up to $4,000.
So when are we going to get those at the table?
So the pursuit of novelty dice and materials has led to some manufacturers to explore highly unusual and at times ethically scrutinized substances. Artisan Dice, for example, is known for producing dice from materials such as moose poop, oosic, and even human bone, which the company states is sourced from retired medical skeletons. The use of such materials have inevitably led to ethical scrutiny and controversy within the gaming community regarding their sourcing and the morality of their commercialization.
Yeah.
Concerns have been raised, particularly regarding human bone and mammoth ivory, about the transparency of the acquisition process and the broader ethical implications of trading such items.
Yeah.
Well,
you gotta wonder, like, did that really come from a cadaver that was retired?
Come on, Grandma. Come on, Grandma. My Chaos Marine's got to need some hits.
Skulls for the skull throne.
While the pursuit of unique and novel materials drives innovation and collectability, it also pushes the boundaries of consumer comfort and ethical considerations. The market's reaction to these materials highlights a growing demand for transparency and responsible sourcing, even in niche luxury markets. So while traditional physical dice remain a cornerstone of tabletop gaming, the landscape of randomness generation is continually evolving, with new methods emerging to offer diverse gameplay experiences, enhanced convenience, and deeper narrative integration. The proliferation of app-based die rollers has provided a highly convenient and versatile alternative to physical dice. These digital tools support all standard polyhedral dice from D4s to D100s and often allow for the creation of custom dice, example 7-sided, 13-sided, or even ranges from 1 to 1,000. Modern dice rolling applications boast a wealth of features that enhance user experience. These include extensive visual customization options, immersive sound effects, and tactile haptic feedback that simulates the very feel of physical rolls. Functionally, they offer roll history tracking, flexible rolling for specific dice with a result, and the ability to save preset dice sets or macros for quick access during gameplay. The development and widespread adaptation of digital dice rollers are a direct response to the demand for convenience, portability, and enhanced customization in gaming. But what if you don't like the shiny click-clacks?
Then you can jump off a cliff. I don't care.
Dude, that is a line we do not cross. Some TTRPGs have moved beyond dice entirely, utilizing standard playing cards or specifically designed custom decks as their primary randomizer. These systems introduce a distinct flavor of randomness, often emphasizing player agency and strategic decision-making. Card-based mechanics can involve drawing cards from a shared deck, comparing card values, or managing a hand of cards that the players can strategically play. Unlike pure die rolls, which are entirely random at the moment of rolling, cards can provide players with a greater degree over the control of their randomness. Players know the probabilities with their hand or the remaining deck and can choose when to play high or low cards to mitigate risk or maximize opportunity. This shifts the focus from merely reacting to a random roll to proactive resource management. Beyond numerical resolutions, cards can also be used to trigger specific narrative effects, manipulating initiative order or represent character traits and abilities. Examples include the Quiet Year, which uses a standard deck of cards to drive narrative prompts. A Hillfolk, Through the Breach, which replaces dice entirely with a shared deck, and Aces and Eights, combining dice and cards for combat, and Twilight 2000, which uses cards for random encounters and initiative. This mechanic introduces a layer of strategic decision-making that is different from pure die rolls. Players have a degree of controlled randomness that they know the probability of within their hand/deck and can choose to mitigate risk or maximize opportunity. This shifts the focus from reacting to a random roll to proactive resource management. Card-based systems reflect a design philosophy that prioritizes player agency and strategic depth within the random element. A growing trend in TTRPG design now involves the use of physical or abstract tokens for outcome determination, often entwined with resource expenditure, narrative triggers, or shared narrative control. Tokens in these systems can represent various meta-currencies such as action points, luck, corruption, or abstract narrative influence. Mechanics often revolve around the spending of tokens to declare significant acts or to influence outcomes, gaining tokens by introducing complications into the narrative or exchanging them to heal character scars or change character instincts. These systems are frequently found in GM-less or narrative-focused games where players collaboratively shape the story, fostering a sense of shared authorship. Examples include Key and Token, where players spend or gain tokens to impact the narrative, and Token, which uses tokens to represent character meeting points, physical injuries, or increased environmental threats. Many TTRPGs, particularly those adhering to the old-school Renaissance school of game design, heavily utilize random tables and oracle systems to generate dynamic and unpredictable narrative elements. These are primary tools for the GM and used to create something on the spot without extensive pre-planning. These tools can encompass a wide range of applications, including random encounter tables, weather tables, treasure tables, or tables for determining item availability in a settlement. By introducing elements of procedural generation, random tables contribute significantly to the emergent narratives, encouraging discovery and improvisation by both players and GMs, as the outcome is not pre-planned. For example, a party might enter a cave expecting goblins, but due to a random roll encounter a sleeping dragon or a hidden hoard of treasure. This forces players to think on their feet and adapt their plans, making each session feel fresh and unplanned, also leading to just random wipes.
Well, again, thinking back to like 40K, when we began playing, you always rolled to see what type of battle you were about to do.
Yeah.
It's Dawn of War. Every time it was Dawn of War.
It was always Dawn of War was always the one answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's our journey through dice.
Yeah, that was interesting. I don't know how many people stuck through to the end.
It's basically like a college level course and a mixture of game design and it is super interesting though.
Uh-huh.
There's parts of it, like for example, Gary Gygax's choice of the D20 really shows that there is this element of Dungeons and Dragons in its own DNA that is random chaoticness.
Yeah.
And so when you have something like a person who wants more statistical predictability, more like mathematical kind of accuracy in their depiction of the game system as a representation of the real life, you end up with something like GURPS, where they basically say like, okay, let's go to a bell curve. Let's do this. But it also kind of shows why there are certain people who are just like, I don't like that. That doesn't feel good.
I know.
Like 100%, it makes more sense to represent your behavior by something like a bell curve, because if you shoot hoops every night growing up as a kid and you go out there, you're probably going to hit like 8 to 9 out of 10 shots because like that's what you've developed that skill.
Right.
But you're not going to go out there, shoot like 10 hoops, have like half of them fail, and then one of them like just bounce off and magically go in your neighbor's thing perfectly, you know?
Right.
Like that's, but
But
also,
I mean, that's also the addition of like proficiency and stuff like that came into D&D.
true. But also like it shows like that between those two examples, going out there and hitting 8 out of 10 baskets versus going out and hitting 5 and then having these two encounters that are weird and like is narratively fulfilling.
Yeah, well, it's the situation where it's just like, yeah, I made a basket. Yeah, I made a basket. Yeah, I made a basket. I just chucked the basketball through my car window.
It's like I threw the basket, it came back, hit my head, I'm bleeding now. I get ticked off, I walk to the trash can, I throw the ball behind me and it goes in somehow.
Right.
And I look around and nobody saw it, you know?
And everybody claps.
Everybody clapped. I also thought it was interesting that the different types of dice manufacturers, like there's also two kind of schools of development. One is for basically RPG dice.
Yeah.
Because like the form has been decided upon. It's like the D10, the D12,
right.
the D100s, and so forth. And like all these Etsy shops are constantly trying to come out with the new hotness to get you.
Yep.
And we have boxes of various ones of them sitting on the shelf over there. People like, and I'm like, for a while I was very much convinced every new D&D character required a new D&D dice.
Yeah, I remember you going through that, and I remember a wife creating one of her first characters and you insisting that she had to buy dice for that character.
New dice for that. And I still like that, but like over that time I've learned that like I think aesthetics were pushing past the point of like usability.
Yeah.
Those sharp edge dice suck. I don't like them.
I don't have a problem with the ones that I have, but the ones I do have a problem with are the ones that have the inclusion, the eyeball thing on the inside, because I have found that those roll wildly not well.
I think in all the rolling, all those different dice, including some really cool ones like holographic glass.
Yeah.
And all this stuff. The best feel is just picking up like Chessex rounded, like
I do like the heavy dice.
Yeah. There is a lot of weight.
Yes.
Like dropping.
You got like the metal ones or the stone.
Getting a nice dice tray.
Yes.
Like specifically, Dahlia's dice tray that I made for her, where that does weird high pitched sound every time it gets donk. Like that came like, whoa, But like, and that's big and separate from like the evolution of dice for wargaming, because in the span of time that we've been playing games like 40K, generations have changed.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, as like a promotional thing for their YouTube presence or whatever, started making dice, and they started arguing about what size and like what features really fill it. Because in this one, instead of the single dice mattering, like you're picking up handfuls of dice. So like you have to like measure this balance between getting dice that are too big and too clumsy to roll versus getting dice that are too small and like they kind of go everywhere.
Yeah.
And they've kind of filtered on a couple sizes. Like I think it's 16 millimeter is like super popular. I know 12 millimeter was like the standard for a while.
Yes.
And when we did Combat Patrol, I went and got that size dice for everything. And I gotta admit, like, it's kind of a sweet spot.
Yeah.
Like, feels pretty good to roll those. Like, I have that a while ago. I think when we got into 8th edition, I bought that like an Amazon from China 100 pack of like blue translucent casino dice, because I was like, that'll be so cool. And not even close to those rounded.
It just doesn't feel the same.
Just not the same. It like, I think they're really getting close to the perfect war game dice size.
It's going to be something weird. They're going to be like, it's actually 11.762 millimeters.
It's the war game standard. This is what you want. This is what you need. Yeah, it's interesting. It's an accessory to all the fun you have at the table. It's also just interesting to think back the dice's connection to emergent gameplay, because really almost every story that you have at the table at some point involves a person reaching down, picking up a piece of plastic and throwing it. whether that's dice or something.
Well, and you think about all those situations too where someone's just like, I'm going to do this. Like, are you sure? And the defining moment is when they pick up the dice. It's just like, oh God, this is going to happen.
It's that camera moment.
Yeah.
This is when the camera zooms in. This is when the musical score kicks in. Everything's like, this is the heightened moment. Can your character pull the sword out and defend Hobbit from the dragon, or is the DM going to roll a natural 20 and stare at you and go, I'm so sorry?
It's when you roll the dice, you get a 1 and you go, bah, 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 wah.
Well, okay. I guess that was probably enough to weed everybody out. So
yeah, if you stuck around, congratulations. Leave a comment.
we get some space to say whatever we want, but we don't really want to say anything. So hey,
comment you survived the dice apocalypse.
Yeah, very much so. Be like, I made it this far, and all I got was this stupid dice. All right, guys, we'll see you next time.
Bye.